I'm thankful my brother outed my secret. The mashed potatoes on my fork trembled as Jake's voice cut through our family Sunday dinner like a blade. So Mom, Dad, did you know Maya's been sneaking around with Emma Rodriguez for the past 4 months? The dining room went dead silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner, the same clock that had witnessed 17 years of my carefully constructed performances at this mahogany table. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up all over Mom's good china. What do you mean, sneaking around? Dad's voice was measured, cautious. He set down his water glass with deliberate precision. Jake's smile was pure venom. I mean dating. Making out. Being girlfriends. Our little Maya's been playing house with her best friend every Tuesday and Thursday when she claims to be studying at the library. The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the plate. Emma and I had been so careful. We'd created elaborate cover stories, coordinated our schedules, even studied actual library layouts so our details would match if anyone asked questions. But Jake had always been observant, too observant for his own good, and apparently for mine too. Maya? Mom's voice was barely above a whisper. I couldn't look at her. Couldn't look at any of them. My eyes fixed on the pattern in the tablecloth, tiny blue flowers that suddenly seemed to be spinning. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I'd had a plan. Graduate in May, get accepted to State University 3 hours away, then tell them during Christmas break of my freshman year when I'd have a safe space to retreat to if everything went wrong. Is this true? Dad asked. Jake leaned back in his chair like he was enjoying a show. Oh, it's true. I saw them last Tuesday behind the CVS on Maple Street. Pretty cozy for just friends if you ask me. Nobody asked you, I finally managed, my voice cracking. Heat flooded my cheeks, and my hands shook as I gripped the edge of the table. Maya, honey, look at me. Mom's tone was gentle, but I couldn't. I stared at those stupid blue flowers and wished I could disappear into their pattern forever. This was exactly what I'd been terrified of for months. Every night I'd lain awake running through worst-case scenarios, but none of them had involved Jake weaponizing my secret. My own brother had just detonated my carefully protected world, and for what? Because he was still bitter about getting fired from his job at the auto shop last week. Because he needed to deflect attention from the fact that he'd been living in our basement for 8 months with no prospects? I can explain, I whispered, though I had no idea how. Oh, this should be good, Jake muttered, taking a swig of his beer. The clock kept ticking. 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon in November, and my life was imploding in slow motion. Emma was probably at home right now, helping her mom prep vegetables for their own family dinner, completely unaware that our secret was currently being dissected at the Morrison family table. I finally forced myself to look up. Mom's brown eyes, the same shade as mine, were wide with surprise but not angry. Dad's expression was unreadable behind his glasses. And Jake? Jake looked satisfied, like he'd just solved a puzzle he'd been working on for months. Well, he prompted. We're all waiting. The word stuck in my throat like concrete. How do you explain 4 months of stolen moments, secret glances, and the way your heart races when someone texts you good morning? How do you tell your parents that their youngest daughter has been living a double life since July, when Emma Rodriguez stopped being just my best friend and became something infinitely more complicated and wonderful? We've been dating since the summer, I said finally, my voice barely audible. Since July 15th, actually. After the 4th of July block party when we walked home together and she. I trailed off, realizing I didn't need to share the details of our first kiss under the streetlight by Miller's Creek. Jake snorted. See? I told you. Our little sister's been. Jake. Dad's voice carried a warning that made my brother's mouth snap shut. That's enough. What, I'm just saying. I said enough. Dad's tone left no room for argument. He turned back to me, his gray eyes softer than I expected. Maya, why didn't you tell us? The question hit like a physical blow. Why? Because every Sunday sermon at St. Matthew's talked about traditional families. Because Mom's book club had spent an entire evening last spring discussing how confused young people were these days. Because Dad had switched the channel that one time when a commercial showed 2 women getting married, muttering something about shoving agendas down everyone's throats. I was scared, I admitted, my voice cracking again. I didn't know how you'd react. I had a whole plan to tell you after graduation, when I was heading to college and had somewhere to go if. I couldn't finish the sentence. Mom's hand flew to her chest. If we rejected you? The hurt in her voice made me flinch. You guys always talk about wanting grandchildren someday, and the church stuff, and I thought. Oh, sweetheart. Mom's chair scraped against the hardwood as she pushed back from the table. For a terrifying second, I thought she was walking away from me, but instead she came around to my side and pulled me into a fierce hug that smelled like her vanilla perfume and Sunday pot roast. Maya Elizabeth Morrison, she whispered into my hair, did you really think we'd love you any less? The tears I'd been holding back since Jake opened his big mouth finally spilled over. I sobbed into Mom's shoulder while Dad's chair creaked. He was standing too, I realized, his hand warm and steady on my back. We love you no matter what, Dad said quietly. No matter who you love. That's what family means. Jake's beer bottle hit the table with a sharp clink. Are you serious right now? You're just okay with this? Yes, we are. Mom's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before as she pulled back to look at me, her own eyes wet. And I'm ashamed that Maya felt she couldn't trust us with something so important. But what about church? What about minding your own business? Dad's glare could have frozen Jake's beer solid. What about not ambushing your sister at the dinner table like some kind of? I thought I was helping. Jake protested, though his voice had lost its earlier smugness. I thought you had a right to know she was lying to you. By humiliating her? Mom stood up straighter, still keeping one protective arm around me. By cornering her like this instead of talking to her privately? What's wrong with you? The grandfather clock chimed 5 times, marking this impossible moment when my worst nightmare was somehow transforming into something I'd never dared to hope for. Jake's face had gone from smug satisfaction to something approaching panic. I thought. He ran his hands through his unwashed hair. You guys freaked out when Cousin Tim got his boyfriend, remember? You didn't talk to Uncle Paul for 3 months. That was different, Dad said firmly. That was about Paul lying to us about Tim's living situation when we were helping pay for his college. It had nothing to do with him being gay. But you said. I said a lot of things I shouldn't have. Dad's voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. And if Tim heard any of that and thought it was about who he loved instead of about trust and money, then I owe him an apology too. My head was spinning. The story I'd constructed in my mind about my family's reaction was crumbling in real time. Every careful assumption I'd made, every fearful scenario I'd rehearsed, none of it was matching this reality. Maya, honey, sit back down. Mom guided me to my chair, then crouched beside me so we were eye level. I need you to understand something. Your father and I might not be perfect. We might say things sometimes that come out wrong. But you are our daughter, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever change how much we love you. Your mother's right, Dad said, settling back into his seat but leaning forward, his elbows on the table. We should have made that clearer. We should have been the kind of parents you felt safe coming to. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. So what, now I'm the bad guy for telling the truth? You're the bad guy for using your sister's private life as a weapon, Mom snapped, her protective instincts fully activated. You're the bad guy for watching her sneak around for months and letting her live in fear instead of talking to her like a decent human being. I didn't know she was scared. Jake's voice cracked slightly. I just thought she was being dramatic and secretive like always. Like always? The words stung more than they should have. When am I dramatic and secretive? Jake's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You're always so careful about everything. So planned out. I figured this was just another one of your control freak things. Control freak? The hurt was morphing into anger now, hot and sharp in my chest. I was terrified, Jake. I've been losing sleep for 4 months thinking I might have to choose between my family and being honest about who I am. That's not being a control freak, that's being scared out of my mind. But why didn't you just ask them? Jake gestured helplessly at our parents. Why didn't you just talk to them instead of creating this whole elaborate lie? The question hung in the air like smoke. Why hadn't I? Looking at Mom's tear-stained face and Dad's concerned expression, it seemed impossible that I'd ever been afraid of him. But I remembered the fear so clearly, the way my stomach would clench every time someone mentioned LGBTQ+ topics, the way I'd analyze every comment for hidden meanings. Because I was 17 and scared, I said finally. Because when you're afraid of losing everything, you don't take chances. You make plans and backup plans and contingency plans. Even with us? Mom's voice was small. Especially with you. Because losing you would have been the worst thing I could imagine. Dad cleared his throat roughly. Well, that was never going to happen. Never. How was I supposed to know that? The words came out sharper than I intended. You changed the channel when gay couples appear in commercials. You make comments about traditional families at dinner. You're right. Dad's interruption was quiet but firm. You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. We gave you reasons to be afraid, and that's on us, not you. The dining room fell silent except for Jake shifting uncomfortably in his chair and the relentless ticking of that grandfather clock. 5:15 now. Emma would be wondering why I hadn't texted her back about plans for tonight. Emma. My girlfriend, who had no idea her relationship status had just been announced to the Morrison family dinner table. I need to call Emma, I said suddenly, the realization hitting me like cold water. She has no idea any of this happened. She's probably wondering why I haven't answered her texts. Mom squeezed my shoulder. Of course, honey. Do you want some privacy? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed against the table. Emma's name lit up the screen with a text that made my stomach flip. Hey babe, my mom wants to know if you're coming to dinner next Sunday. Should I tell her yes? Face blowing a kiss. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. Emma's family had known about us since August. Her mom, Patricia, had figured it out when she came home early from work one day and found us curled up together on their living room couch, sharing earbuds and looking at Emma the way you definitely don't look at just a friend. Instead of freaking out, Patricia had simply asked if we wanted grilled cheese sandwiches. What's wrong now? Jake asked, apparently reading my expression. Emma's mom wants me to come to Sunday dinner next week, I said, holding up my phone. Her whole family's known about us for months. They've been nothing but supportive. The words came out more accusatory than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Jake's face flushed red. Wait, Mom said slowly. Her family knows? Patricia figured it out in August. She sat us down that same day and told us we were welcome in their home, that love was love, and that she was proud of Emma for being brave enough to be herself. I looked directly at Jake. She didn't ambush us at dinner or use it against us when she was having a bad day. Maya, Jake started. No, let me finish. The anger I'd been swallowing was finally bubbling up. Do you want to know the real reason I've been scared to tell Mom and Dad? It wasn't just the church stuff or the comments about traditional families. It was you, Jake. His mouth fell open. Me? You've been calling things gay as an insult since we were kids. You made jokes about the pride flags downtown last June. My voice caught as a specific memory surfaced. You told me I was turning into a weird little lesbian when I cut my hair short in 8th grade, remember? As a joke. But I was 13 and terrified because part of me wondered if you were right. The color drained from Jake's face. Maya, I didn't mean. I know you didn't mean it. That's what made it worse. I was crying again, but these tears felt different, cleaner somehow. You never meant any of it, but I heard every joke, every casual comment, every time you used gay like it was something bad. And I thought, if my own brother talks about people like me that way when he's joking around, how's he going to react when it's real? Jake looked like I'd slapped him. I stopped saying that stuff. I haven't said anything like that in years. You stopped saying it out loud. But Jake, you just outed me to hurt me. You knew it was private, you knew it was important, and you used it as ammunition because you were mad about your job situation. I wiped my eyes with my napkin, not caring that I was probably smearing mascara everywhere. How is that any different than those jokes in 8th grade? Because Jake's voice trailed off. He stared down at his plate, where his pot roast was getting cold and congealed. I was angry. I was embarrassed about the job thing, and Mom and Dad were asking all these questions about my plans, and I wanted them to focus on someone else for 5 minutes. So you decided to blow up my life? I didn't think it would blow up your life. I thought. He ran his hands through his hair again, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. I thought maybe they already suspected. I thought it would just be this quick thing and then we'd move on. Dad's voice was ice cold. You thought you'd out your 17-year-old sister as a quick distraction technique? When you put it like that, it sounds exactly like what it was, Mom said sharply. Cruel and selfish. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma, everything okay? You've been quiet today. I stared at the message, thinking about how simple things were at the Rodriguez house. How Patricia had hugged us both after that first conversation and promised that our relationship was safe with her family. How Emma's little brother Carlos had started referring to me as his sister-in-law and asking when we were getting married. How normal and accepted and loved I felt there. I need to tell Emma what happened, I said, standing up from the table. And then I need to figure out what this means for us. Because Jake, what you did today, it doesn't just affect me. Emma's been protecting this secret too. She's been lying to her friends, changing plans, being careful about what she posts online. You just made that decision for both of us. Jake's face crumpled. I didn't think about Emma. I'm sorry, I really didn't think. That's the problem, I said quietly. You didn't think. You just acted, and now I have to deal with the consequences. But even as I said it, looking at my parents' supportive faces and feeling the weight of months of secrecy lifting from my shoulders, I wasn't entirely sure all the consequences would be bad ones. I walked into the kitchen to call Emma, my hands still shaking from adrenaline. Through the doorway, I could hear Jake's voice, quieter now, almost pleading. I really screwed up, didn't I? Yes, you did, Dad replied without hesitation. The question is what you're going to do about it. Emma picked up on the second ring. Maya. Perfect timing. I was just telling Mom about that new tie place on. Emma, we need to talk. My voice came out shakier than I intended. Something happened at dinner. The cheerful background noise from her house, Carlos practicing guitar, her dad watching football, suddenly felt like it was coming from another world. A simpler world where secrets stayed secret until you were ready. What's wrong? You sound upset. I took a deep breath, staring at the motivational calendar on our kitchen wall. November 20th, every ending is a new beginning. How perfectly ironic. Jake outed us. To my parents. Like, 20 minutes ago. Silence. Then, what do you mean he outed us? I mean he told them we'd been dating since July. He knew about our Tuesday and Thursday library cover story. He saw us kissing behind the CVS last week. The words tumbled out faster now. He just announced it at Sunday dinner like he was commenting on the weather. Oh my God. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. Maya, are you okay? Are you safe? Do you need me to come get you? Her immediate concern, jumping straight to my safety instead of asking about her own exposure, made my chest tight with love and guilt. This was exactly what I'd been trying to protect her from for months. I'm safe. Actually, Emma, they were amazing. Mom hugged me and cried and said nothing could change how much they love me. Dad apologized for making me feel like I couldn't trust them. They're mad at Jake, not at us. Wait, what? I could hear her moving, probably finding somewhere private to talk. Your parents are okay with it? More than okay. They're upset that I was scared to tell them in the first place. Holy shit, Maya. That's incredible. Her voice was thick with emotion now. I'd been so worried about you, about what would happen when they found out. I've had nightmares about it. You never told me you were having nightmares. Because it wasn't your job to manage my anxiety about your family situation. She paused. But Maya, how did Jake know about our cover stories? How long has he been watching us? That question had been nagging at me too. I don't know. He mentioned seeing us Tuesday, but he knew too many details. The library thing, our schedules. A horrible thought occurred to me. Emma, what if he's been following us? What if he's been documenting this for weeks, waiting for the right moment to use it? That's really messed up if true. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Jake's shoulders hunched over his plate while Mom gestured emphatically. Her voice carried, 17 years old, Jacob. She's still in high school. This should have been her choice to make. I know. Jake's voice cracked with frustration. I know I messed up, but I can't take it back now. Emma was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? I can hear your brain working from here. I'm thinking I need to know exactly how much Jake knows and how long he's known it. Because Emma, if he's been sitting on this information for months, if he's been watching us and gathering evidence. I trailed off, the implications making me feel sick. Then it was even more calculated than we thought. Yeah. And I need to know why today. Why did he choose today to blow everything up? From the dining room, Dad's voice, Maya? Could you come back in here? I think we need to have a longer conversation. All of us. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. Emma, I have to go back in there. Can we talk tonight? After I figure out what the hell is happening with my family? Of course. Maya? I love you. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together. I love you too. Walking back into the dining room felt like entering a courtroom where I was somehow both the victim and the key witness in a case I didn't fully understand yet. Walking back into that dining room felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone knew their lines except me. Jake had pushed his plate away and was staring at his hands like they held the answers to questions he'd never thought to ask. Mom had moved to Dad's side of the table, presenting a united front that would have been comforting if I wasn't still processing the seismic shift in my reality. Sit down, sweetheart, Mom said gently. We need to understand what's been happening here. I took my seat, hyper-aware of the way Jake avoided my eyes. Emma's pretty shaken up, I said. She wants to know how long you've been watching us. Jake's head snapped up. I wasn't watching you. Not like that. Then how did you know about our Tuesday and Thursday schedule? How did you know we'd been together since July 15th specifically? The date had slipped out earlier, but now I realized how precise that information was. I never told anyone the exact day we started dating. Dad leaned forward. Jake? That's a fair question. Jake's face flushed red again. I heard you on the phone one night. In August. You were talking to Emma about your 1-month anniversary and how you couldn't believe it had been a month since the 4th of July party. My stomach clenched. I remembered that conversation. I'd been in my room with the door closed, speaking in whispers because everyone was supposedly asleep. You were eavesdropping on my private phone calls? I wasn't eavesdropping. I was getting water from the kitchen and heard you talking. The walls in this house are thin, Maya. It's not my fault you were being all giggly and obvious. Obvious? The word stung. Emma and I had been so careful, so paranoid about every detail. You changed, okay? After that party in July, you were different. Happier, but also jumpy all the time. You started doing your hair differently, wearing Emma's hoodie, checking your phone every 5 seconds. Jake's voice gained momentum as he defended himself. And then there were the schedule changes. You never went to the library twice a week before this year, but suddenly you're there every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork? Mom and Dad exchanged glances. We did notice you seemed happier this fall, Mom admitted. We thought maybe you were just excited about senior year. I was happier, I said quietly. I was happier than I'd ever been in my life. But I was also terrified every single day that someone would figure it out before I was ready. But why were you so scared of us? Dad's voice carried genuine hurt. Maya, we've never given you reason to think we'd reject you for being gay. Haven't you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Dad, last Christmas when we were watching that Hallmark movie with the lesbian couple, you said it felt forced and unrealistic. Mom, you literally said why does everything have to be so political now when they kissed? Dad's face went pale. I don't remember saying that. I do. Because I was sitting right there on the couch next to you, and I felt like I was going to throw up. The memory was crystal clear, the way my chest had tightened, how I'd excused myself to go to the bathroom and stood there staring at myself in the mirror, wondering if I'd ever be able to tell them the truth. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. Oh honey, we had no idea you were taking those comments personally. How could I not take them personally? You were talking about people like me. Jake shifted uncomfortably. I still don't get why you couldn't just say something. Like, hey, that comment hurt my feelings or whatever. Because I was 17 and closeted. The frustration exploded out of me. Because when you're hiding something that fundamental about yourself, everything feels like a test. Every comment, every joke, every casual observation becomes evidence for or against whether it's safe to be honest. That sounds exhausting, Dad said quietly. It was. It really, really was. I looked directly at Jake. And you made it worse. Every gay joke, every time you called something weird or awkward when queer couples appeared on TV, every casual comment about how Emma and I were joined at the hip, it all added to the pile of reasons why I felt like I had to keep hiding. Jake's voice was small. I never meant to make you feel unsafe. But you did. And then today, when you were angry about your own stuff, you decided to use my secret as a weapon. I paused, watching his face crumple. Jake, what if they had reacted badly? What if Mom and Dad had kicked me out, or forbidden me from seeing Emma, or sent me to conversion therapy? Did you think about any of those possibilities before you opened your mouth? Conversion therapy? Mom looked horrified. Maya, we would never. I know that now. But 4 hours ago, I didn't know that. 4 hours ago, I was planning to wait 7 more months before having this conversation, and I was going to do it somewhere with an exit strategy. I turned back to Jake. You took that choice away from me. You gambling with my safety so you could deflect attention from getting fired. The grandfather clock chimed 6 times, marking nearly 2 hours since my world had turned upside down. Jake looked like he might cry, which was something I hadn't seen since he was 12 years old and broke his arm falling off his bike. I'm sorry, he whispered. Maya, I'm really, really sorry. I was angry and stupid and I didn't think about any of that stuff. I wanted Mom and Dad to stop asking about my job applications and my 5-year plan and why I'm not dating anyone. Something clicked. Wait. Why you're not dating anyone? Jake's face went even redder. It's not important. Jake, Dad's voice carried a warning. What's going on? My brother looked around the table like a trapped animal, and suddenly I understood. The deflection, the timing, the way he'd been so focused on my secret relationship. Oh my God, I breathed. You're gay too. The words hung in the air like a bomb I'd accidentally detonated. Jake's face went from red to completely white in the span of a heartbeat, and his mouth opened and closed without any sound coming out. Maya, Mom said carefully, what makes you think? The deflection. The way he's been so focused on my dating life while dodging questions about his own. I stared at my brother, pieces clicking into place. Jake, you're 25 years old and you haven't brought anyone home since Sarah Martinez in high school. You moved back in August right after Pride Month, and you've been weird and defensive ever since. And just now, when you were explaining why you outed me, you mentioned Mom and Dad asking why you're not dating anyone like it was this huge source of stress. Jake's hands were shaking now. Maya, don't. That's why you were so angry about me having a secret relationship. It wasn't just about the lying, it was about me getting to have something you can't let yourself have. The realization hit me like cold water. You've been watching Emma and me be happy together, and it was killing you because you want that too but you're too scared to. Stop. Jake's voice cracked. Just stop talking. Dad leaned forward slowly. Son? Is there something you want to tell us? The silence stretched so long I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the distant sound of Mrs. Patterson's dog barking next door, the whisper of air through the heating vents. Jake stared at his hands like they might transform into something more useful than the traitorous things that had just been exposed along with mine. I can't do this, he whispered finally. Not like this. Not after what I just did to Maya. Jake, I started, but he was already pushing back from the table. No. You don't get to psychoanalyze me after I just ruined your life. That's not how this works. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood, but he didn't leave. He just stood there, hands clenched at his sides, looking like he might bolt or break down crying. Mom's voice was impossibly gentle. Sweetheart, you didn't ruin Maya's life. Look around this table. We're all still here. We still love both of you. But I could have, Jake said, and his voice was thick with tears now. She's right, I could have ruined everything for her, and I was too selfish to care. What kind of person does that make me? What kind of brother? The broken sound in his voice did something unexpected to my chest. I was still angry, furious, actually, but underneath that anger was something that felt almost like recognition. The self-loathing, the fear, the way he was standing there like he expected us all to reject him. The kind of brother who's scared out of his mind, I said quietly. Just like I was. Jake's eyes snapped to mine, wide and vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. Maya, You're gay, aren't you? The question came out softer this time, not an accusation but an offering. And you've been watching me sneak around with Emma, getting to be happy and in love, while you're stuck living in our basement pretending you don't want the same thing. A single tear rolled down Jake's cheek. It doesn't matter what I want. I'm not brave like you. Brave? I almost laughed. Jake, I've been having panic attacks for 4 months. I've lost 12 pounds from stress. Emma had to talk me out of breaking up with her 3 different times because I was so terrified of this exact moment. That's not brave, that's barely surviving. Dad cleared his throat. Jake, why don't you sit back down? Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Jake wiped his face with the back of his hand. I'm not like Maya. I don't have some perfect girlfriend waiting for me. I don't have a plan or a support system or any of that. I just have this job at Peterson's Auto that I screwed up in this family that I just disappointed and a bunch of feelings I don't know what to do with. What feelings? Mom asked gently. Jake looked at her for a long moment, and I could see him calculating whether it was safe to answer. Finally, he sank back into his chair like the weight of keeping secrets was physically exhausting him. There's this guy, he said so quietly I had to strain to hear him. Marcus. He works at the coffee shop on 5th Street. I don't know what we've been doing. Talking, mostly. He gave me his number 6 weeks ago, and we've been texting every day since then. Jake's voice got smaller with each word. He wants to take me to dinner. Like a real date. And I want to say yes so badly it feels like it might kill me, but I keep making excuses because what if someone sees us? What if word gets back to you guys? What if? What if we react exactly like we just reacted to Maya? Dad interrupted. With love and support? Jake stared at him. But I'm different. Maya's 17 and still figuring things out. I'm 25. I should have my life together by now. I shouldn't be living in your basement, scared to text back a guy who probably thinks I'm a complete flake by now. The weight of Jake's confession settled over our dining room like dust after an explosion. Here we were, both Morrison kids stripped bare of our secrets on the same Sunday evening, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the cosmic joke of it all. Jake, Mom said carefully, being 25 doesn't mean you have everything figured out. Your father didn't tell his parents he wanted to be a teacher instead of taking over their hardware store until he was 30. That's completely different. Is it? Dad interrupted. I spent 5 years pretending to be interested in drill bits and paint samples because I was terrified of disappointing them. Fear doesn't have an expiration date, son. I stared at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in months. The dark circles under his eyes that I'd attributed to late nights playing video games. The way he'd been checking his phone constantly, then shoving it away with this frustrated expression. The reason he'd been so irritable lately, snapping at all of us over little things. 6 weeks? I asked. You've been talking to Marcus for 6 weeks? Jake nodded miserably. Every morning he texts me the stupid dad joke. Every night I sent him a picture of whatever Mom cooked for dinner because he's always eating cereal or takeout. A ghost of a smile flickered across his face. Last Tuesday he sent me this long message about wanting to learn to cook, and I almost invited him over here, but then I panicked and told him I was busy. Last Tuesday, I repeated slowly. Jake, last Tuesday was when you saw Emma and me behind the CVS. His face crumpled. Yeah. I was driving around trying to work up the courage to call Marcus back. He'd asked if I wanted to go to that new Indian restaurant on Saturday, and then I saw you two looking so happy and normal and I just lost it. The pieces were clicking together with horrible clarity. You've been watching Emma and me because we had what you wanted. Not watching like a creep, Jake said quickly. But yeah, I noticed. You guys text constantly and smile at your phones. You make these elaborate plans to spend time together. You look at each other like. He trailed off, his voice thick. Like you're each other's favorite person in the world. We are each other's favorite person, I said quietly. I know. And I wanted that so badly it felt like it was eating me alive. Jake's hands were shaking again. Marcus makes me laugh. He remembers things I tell him. He sends me pictures of dogs he sees on his lunch breaks because I mentioned once that I miss having a dog. And every time he asks to see me in person, I make up some excuse because I'm a coward. Mom reached across the table and covered Jake's hand with hers. You're not a coward. You're scared. There's a difference. Is there? Because Maya was scared too, but she still chose to be with Emma. She still chose to be happy instead of safe. I chose to be miserable and terrified every single day, I corrected. Jake, I threw up before school at least twice a week from anxiety. I started keeping antacids in my backpack because my stomach hurt constantly. The only reason Emma and I lasted this long is because she's incredibly patient and kept talking me down from panic spirals. Dad was quiet for a moment, then said, It sounds like you've both been carrying some heavy burdens alone. Not alone, Jake said bitterly. Maya had Emma. I just had Marcus texting me jokes while I hid in the basement like some kind of troll. You could have talked to me, I said, and the words surprised me. 4 hours ago, if someone had told me I'd be offering emotional support to the brother who just outed me, I'd have laughed in their face. But looking at Jake now, seeing my own fear reflected in his eyes, I felt something shift. How could I talk to you? You were sneaking around, lying to everyone, clearly not trusting any of us with your secret. Why would you trust me with mine? He had a point. Because maybe we could have been scared together instead of scared alone. Jake looked at me with something that might have been hope. You think Marcus will still want to go to dinner after I've ignored his last 3 texts? Only one way to find out. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed texts from Emma and the sound of Jake's voice drifting up from the kitchen. For a disorienting moment, I thought I'd dreamed the entire dinner conversation, until I heard him say Marcus and my stomach dropped back into reality. I crept to the top of the stairs, still in my pajamas, and listened. I know I've been weird about hanging out in person, Jake was saying, his voice tight with nerves. There's some family stuff I needed to work through first, but I think I'm ready now. If you still want to try that Indian place. Mom's voice, warm and encouraging, tell him we'd love to meet him sometime. When you're ready. Mom, I can't just, Jake's protest was cut off by what sounded like his phone buzzing. A pause. Then, he says yes. Saturday at 7. He says. Another pause, longer this time. He says he's been worried about me and he's glad I'm okay. My chest tightened unexpectedly. 6 weeks of Jake torturing himself, and Marcus had just been worried. It reminded me of all the times Emma had asked if everything was alright when I'd gotten weird and distant during my worst anxiety spirals. I was halfway down the stairs when my own phone rang. Emma's name lit up the screen, and I realized I'd been so caught up in Jake's drama that I'd forgotten to call her back last night. Maya Elizabeth Morrison, Emma's voice was sharp with worry the moment I picked up. You said you'd call me last night. I've been awake since 5 a.m. imagining worst-case scenarios. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. After I hung up with you, Jake and I. Emma, he's gay too. Silence. Then, what do you mean, too? I mean he's been hiding a secret relationship just like we were. Well, not a relationship exactly, but there's this guy Marcus from the coffee shop and I paused, realizing how this sounded. I'm not making this up. Jake outed me because he was jealous that we get to be together and he's been too scared to even go on a date. Holy shit. Emma's voice was softer now. Maya, that's actually really sad. I know. I'm still furious at him for what he did, but also. I sank onto the bottom step, lowering my voice. Also, I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd been braver. If I'd told my parents months ago and then been able to help Jake instead of us both suffering in secret. Hey, no. Emma's tone turned fierce. You don't get to blame yourself for Jake's choices. You were protecting yourself the best way you knew how. But what if? Maya, stop. You were 17 years old dealing with your own coming out crisis. It wasn't your job to manage Jake's sexuality too. She paused. Although I have to ask, how did you figure it out? Because apparently you're better at reading people than either of us realized. I laughed despite myself. It was the deflection. He was so focused on my secret relationship because he wanted what we had. Plus, he's been weird about dating questions for months, and yesterday when he was explaining why he outed me, he mentioned Mom and Dad asking about his love life like it was this huge source of stress. Damn. You went full detective mode. Yeah, well, turns out having your own secret makes you really good at spotting other people's tells. I heard Jake's voice from the kitchen again, still on the phone with Marcus, and felt that weird mixture of anger and sympathy twist in my stomach. Emma, can I ask you something? Always. Are you angry? About Jake forcing us out of the closet? Because you have every right to be furious. Emma was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, I'm processing. I mean, yes, I'm angry that he took our choice away. But Maya, your parents love you. Your mom hugged you and cried happy tears. Your dad apologized for making you feel unsafe. Her voice got thick with emotion. Do you know how many queer kids would give anything for that reaction? I know. I keep feeling guilty for being relieved. Don't feel guilty. Feel grateful. Feel lucky. Feel whatever you need to feel. She paused. But Maya, there's something else we need to talk about. Something I didn't want to bring up yesterday while you were dealing with a family crisis. My stomach clenched. What kind of something? The kind where Jessica Chin saw us holding hands in the parking lot after school on Friday, and she's been texting people about it all weekend. The bottom dropped out of my world all over again. What do you mean, texting people? I mean by tomorrow morning, half our senior class is going to know we're dating. Emma's voice was carefully controlled. Maya, I'm so sorry. I should have told you yesterday, but then Jake dropped his bomb and it seemed. How many people know? I interrupted, my mind racing through social scenarios, calculating damage. As of last night? Maybe 8 or 10. But you know how these things spread. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability settle over me. After months of careful planning and secret keeping, everything was unraveling at once. Jake's dinner table revelation had been just the beginning. Maya? Talk to me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, I said slowly, that maybe the universe is trying to tell me something about the impossibility of keeping secrets forever. The school hallway felt like walking through a minefield Monday morning. Every whispered conversation, every glance in my direction, every phone screen that got quickly flipped face down when I passed, all of it confirmed what Emma had warned me about. By first period, our relationship had become the latest piece of Riverside high gossip. Maya. Chloe Sanders caught up to me at my locker, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement that meant she had information she was dying to share. Is it true about you and Emma Rodriguez? My hand stilled on my combination lock. 3 months ago, this question would have sent me into a full panic attack. Now, after surviving Jake's dinner table ambush and my parents' overwhelming acceptance, it just felt exhausting. What exactly did you hear? I asked, meeting her eyes directly. Jessica said she saw you guys holding hands in the parking lot Friday. And then Madison heard from her sister who works at the coffee shop that Jake Morrison was in there yesterday asking about some guy named Marcus. Chloe's voice dropped to a whisper. She said he seemed really nervous and kept checking his phone. My stomach twisted. Not only was my relationship becoming school gossip, but Jake's potential love life was getting dragged into it too. The Morrison siblings were apparently this week's entertainment. Chloe, can you do me a favor? I slammed my locker shut, decision crystallizing. Instead of listening to secondhand gossip, why don't you just ask me directly what you want to know? Her eyes widened. Are you and Emma really together? The hallway seemed to quiet around us, and I realized other people were listening. Emma appeared at my shoulder like she had some kind of radar for when I was about to make impulsive decisions. Yes, I said clearly, loud enough for the eavesdroppers to hear. Emma and I have been dating since July. Any other questions? Emma's hand found mine, warm and steady. We weren't planning to make a big announcement, she added, but we're not going to lie about it either. The small crowd that had gathered looked surprised by our directness. I think they'd been expecting denial or drama, not calm confirmation. That's so cool, said Marcus Webb from my chemistry class. You guys make sense together. Emma's been way happier this semester. Thanks, Marcus, Emma smiled. Maya makes me happy. As people started to disperse, chattering among themselves, I felt something I hadn't expected, relief. The secret was out completely now, not just with my family but with everyone who mattered in my daily life. No more calculating which hallways to walk down, no more careful distance in public, no more elaborate cover stories. How do you feel? Emma asked as we walked toward first period. Lighter, I admitted. Scared, but lighter. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Marcus said yes to Saturday. Also, Mom wants to know if Emma's coming to dinner next Sunday like her mom suggested. Also, I'm sorry again. I showed Emma the message. What do you think? Ready to be the official girlfriend at Morrison family dinners? Are you kidding? I've been ready for months. Your mom's pot roast is legendary. She paused. Maya, can I tell you something? Always. Yesterday, when you called to tell me what Jake did, I was terrified. But also? I was relieved. I've been dreading the secret keeping more than the potential rejection. She squeezed my hand. I know Jake went about it the wrong way, but maybe he accidentally gave us something we needed. Yeah, I said, thinking about Jake's nervous voice on the phone with Marcus this morning, about my parents' tears of acceptance, about walking through school holding Emma's hand without fear. Maybe he did. 2 weeks after our impromptu coming out extravaganza, I was starting to think life might actually settle into something resembling normal, until I walked into the guidance counselor's office on Thursday afternoon and found Mrs. Peterson looking more serious than I'd ever seen her. Maya, thank you for coming in. Please, sit down. She gestured to the chair across from her desk, the same one where we discussed college applications just last month when my biggest worry was whether my essay about overcoming challenges was too generic. Is this about my Stanford application? Because I know the deadline's coming up, but this is about the incidents that have been reported over the past few days. Mrs. Peterson opened a manila folder that made my stomach clench. 3 separate students have come forward about harassment they've witnessed or experienced since word got around about your relationship with Emma. My mouth went dry. What kind of incidents? Homophobic slurs written on Emma's locker Monday morning. Someone leaving printed Bible verses about homosexuality in your backpack during gym class Tuesday. And yesterday, Tyler Kowalski was overheard in the cafeteria making explicit comments about what you and Emma do together. Mrs. Peterson's voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the anger in her eyes. Comments that were graphic enough that several students felt uncomfortable enough to report them. The relief I'd been feeling for 2 weeks evaporated instantly. I didn't know about any of this except Emma's locker. She said she cleaned it off before I could see it. Emma's been trying to shield you from most of it. She asked the students who reported the other incidents not to tell you because she was worried you'd blame yourself. Mrs. Peterson leaned forward. Maya, I need you to understand that none of this is your fault. But we need to address it before it escalates. What do you mean, escalates? Tyler Kowalski has been suspended for 3 days as of this morning. The Bible verses incident is harder to trace since it happened during a class period, but we're reviewing security footage. She paused. However, there's something else. Something that concerns me more than random acts of homophobia from classmates. I gripped the arms of my chair. What? Your brother Jake called the school this morning. He wanted to know if there had been any problems for you since people found out about your relationship. Mrs. Peterson consulted her notes. When I confirmed that there had been some incidents, he became very agitated. He said, and I quote, "This is all my fault. I should have kept my mouth shut. Maya's going to hate me forever." My heart sank. Jake had been doing better. He'd gone on his date with Marcus Saturday night, and they'd apparently talked until 2 a.m. over dinner and dessert. Mom had been practically glowing Sunday morning when Jake came home with this shy smile and announced that Marcus was really great and they were seeing each other again Thursday. Mrs. Peterson, my brother's going through his own stuff right now. He didn't mean. Maya, I'm concerned that Jake might be experiencing some kind of crisis related to guilt over your situation. The person I spoke with this morning sounded panicked and self-destructive. She pulled out another piece of paper. He also asked me whether the harassment might affect your college applications, specifically whether colleges could rescind acceptance letters if there were disciplinary issues at school. But I'm not the one being disciplined. I know that. You know that. But someone who's already feeling guilty and anxious might not be thinking clearly. Mrs. Peterson's expression softened. Maya, has Jake been sleeping? Eating normally? Has his behavior changed since this weekend? I thought about Jake at breakfast this morning, how he'd barely touched his eggs, how he'd checked his phone obsessively, how he'd asked me 3 separate times if I was really okay with everything that had happened. I'd attributed it to normal anxiety about dating Marcus, but now. He's been weird all week, I admitted. Jumpy and apologetic and asking if I hate him about every 6 hours. A horrible thought occurred to me. Mrs. Peterson, you don't think he'd do something stupid, do you? I think your brother is carrying a lot of guilt about his role in your coming out process, and now that there have been negative consequences, he's blaming himself entirely. She closed the folder. I think you should talk to your parents about getting him some support. And Maya? I think you should consider whether you want to have a conversation with him about forgiveness. Forgiveness? The word came out sharper than I intended. Mrs. Peterson, he outed me at dinner. He used my private relationship as a weapon when he was having a bad day. Why should I be worried about his guilt when Emma and I are dealing with Tyler Kowalski making gross comments about our sex life? Because sometimes the people we love make terrible decisions that have unintended consequences, and they torture themselves more effectively than we ever could. Mrs. Peterson's voice was gentle but firm. Jake didn't intend for you to face harassment at school. But he's watching it happen anyway, knowing he set the chain of events in motion. I stared at the motivational poster on her wall, a kitten hanging from a branch with hang in there printed below it, and felt the weight of family responsibility settling on my shoulders like a lead blanket. What am I supposed to say to him? It's okay that you violated my privacy and put me at risk? You're supposed to say whatever feels true to you. But Maya, consider this, Jake is also gay, also figuring out his identity, also scared. Maybe he needs the same grace you needed when you were keeping secrets. I found Jake in his basement room that afternoon, sitting on his unmade bed with his phone in his hands and Marcus's contact info pulled up on the screen. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, and there were 3 empty energy drink cans scattered around his nightstand. Jake? We need to talk. He startled so hard he nearly dropped his phone. Maya, I didn't hear you come down. Is everything okay? Did something else happen at school? Because I called Mrs. Peterson this morning and she said there were incidents and Jake. I held up my hand to stop the flood of anxious words. Stop. Just stop for a second. He stared at me with wide, bloodshot eyes, and I realized Mrs. Peterson had been right to be concerned. My brother looked like he was coming apart at the seams. When's the last time you slept? I asked, sitting down on his desk chair. I don't know. Tuesday? Maybe Monday night. He ran his hands through his greasy hair. Maya, I need to know, are you safe at school? Because if Tyler Kowalski or anyone else is bothering you, I can. You can what? Fight my battles for me? I kept my voice calm even though seeing him like this was making my chest tight. Jake, you look terrible. Have you been eating? I'm fine. This isn't about me. He gestured frantically. This is about you dealing with harassment because I couldn't keep my stupid mouth shut. Mrs. Peterson said someone left Bible verses in your backpack. She said kids are saying things about you and Emma that are, his voice cracked. This is all my fault. Some of it is your fault, I said quietly, and watched him flinch like I'd slapped him. But Jake, Tyler Kowalski being a homophobic asshole isn't something you created. That's just Tyler being Tyler. But if I hadn't doubted you, he wouldn't have a reason to. If you hadn't doubted me, someone else would have eventually. Jessica Chin saw Emma and me in the parking lot last Friday, remember? She was already spreading rumors before your dinner table announcement. I leaned forward. Jake, the harassment sucks, but it's not the end of the world. Mrs. Peterson suspended Tyler, they're handling the locker incident, and most people at school have been supportive. Jake stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. How are you so calm about this? How are you not furious at me? The question hung between us in the stale air of his basement room. How was I not furious? 2 weeks ago, I would have been. 2 weeks ago, I'd been ready to never speak to him again. Because I'm exhausted, Jake. I'm tired of being angry all the time. I gestured around his disaster of a room. And because you're clearly punishing yourself more than I ever could. I deserve to be punished. I ruined everything for you. You didn't ruin everything. Yeah, you took away my choice about when and how to come out, and that was awful. But Jake. I paused, trying to find words for something I was still figuring out myself. Mom hugged me and cried happy tears. Dad apologized for making me feel unsafe. Emma and I don't have to sneak around anymore. I can hold her hand in the hallway without calculating who might see us. Jake's phone buzzed with what looked like a text from Marcus, but he didn't even glance at it. What about college? Mrs. Peterson said harassment incidents could affect your applications if. Jake, stop. Just stop catastrophizing for 30 seconds. I grabbed his phone from his hands and saw 17 unread messages from Marcus, all concerned and increasingly worried. When's the last time you talked to Marcus? Tuesday night. I canceled our Thursday date because I needed to figure out the school situation and make sure you were. You canceled your date to obsess over my problems? The pieces were clicking together with horrible clarity. Jake, Marcus has been texting you constantly. He thinks you're ghosting him. Jake finally looked at his phone screen and his face went pale. Oh shit. I didn't. I was just trying to fix things for you first. There's nothing to fix. At least, nothing you can fix. I stood up, frustration finally overriding my sympathy. Jake, you need to text Marcus back right now and explain that you're having a family crisis, not that you're losing interest. And then you need to shower, eat something that isn't caffeinated sugar, and get some sleep. But what about the Tyler situation? What about making sure you're safe at? What about your own life? I interrupted. Jake, you finally found someone who makes you happy, and you're sabotaging it because you feel guilty about mine. That's not helping anyone. Jake stared at his phone for a long moment, then slowly started typing a response to Marcus. I watched his thumbs move across the screen, crafting what looked like a long explanation, and felt some of the tension in my chest ease. There, he said finally, hitting send. I told him I'd been dealing with family stuff and I'm sorry for going radio silent. I asked if we could reschedule for Friday night instead. Good. Now shower. You smell like energy drinks and anxiety. Jake actually cracked a small smile at that, the first one I'd seen from him since Sunday dinner. Maya, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think Mom and Dad would be okay with me bringing Marcus to dinner sometime? Like, actually introducing him as my boyfriend? His voice got smaller with each word. Because I keep thinking about how natural it seemed when they talked about Emma coming over, and I want that too, but I'm scared I already used up all their acceptance quota on your situation. My heart broke a little. Jake, there's no acceptance quota. Mom literally asked me yesterday if she should make extra pot roast in case Emma wants to bring leftovers home to her family. I sat back down on his desk chair. Besides, you heard what Dad said at dinner. He's been carrying guilt about Cousin Tim for years. I think he'd be relieved to get another chance to be the supportive parent. But what if Marcus doesn't want to meet them? What if this whole week of me being weird scared him off and he's only texting back to be polite? Before I could answer, Jake's phone buzzed with a reply. His face lit up as he read it, and suddenly he looked like my brother again instead of the anxious wreck who'd been living in our basement. He says Friday works great, and he's been worried about me all week. He wants to know if I need to talk about whatever family stuff is going on. Jake looked up at me with something like wonder. He's not mad. He's just concerned. That's what people who care about you do, Jake. They worry when you disappear, not because they're annoyed but because they want to make sure you're okay. Like Emma texting you constantly after I outed you? Exactly like that. I paused, watching Jake save Marcus's new message with the kind of care usually reserved for precious objects. Jake, can I tell you something that might sound weird? After this week? Nothing's going to sound weird. I'm glad you're gay too. He blinked at me. What? I mean, I'm still furious about the dinner table thing, and we're going to need to have more conversations about boundaries and respect. But Jake, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have a brother who actually gets it. I gestured around his room. You understand what it's like to be scared of disappointing mom and dad. You know what it feels like to want something so badly it hurts but being too terrified to reach for it. Jake's eyes got suspiciously bright. I spent 4 months watching you and Emma be happy together and hating myself for being jealous instead of supportive. And I spent 4 months thinking I was completely alone in this family. I stood up again, suddenly needing to move. We could have been helping each other instead of suffering separately. I know. I keep thinking about that too. Jake finally got up from his bed, swaying slightly on his feet. Maya, do you think we can figure out how to be actual siblings now? Like, the kind who talk to each other about important stuff? I think we can try. But Jake? Yeah? Next time you're having a crisis about dating or sexuality or anything else, you come talk to me instead of sabotaging my dinner. Deal? He laughed, and it sounded almost normal. Deal. And Maya? Yeah? Next time you're planning to keep a massive secret for months, maybe consider letting your gay brother in on it. I'm pretty good at cover stories, apparently. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. We'll work on our communication skills together. Starting with me texting Marcus back like a normal human being? Starting with you showering like a normal human being. Then texting Marcus. 3 days after my basement intervention with Jake, I was finally starting to believe that maybe our family could actually figure out how to navigate this new reality, until Mom knocked on my bedroom door Friday night with an expression that made my stomach drop. Maya, honey, we need to talk. Could you come downstairs? Your father and we've had some phone calls today. The careful way she said it, the hesitation in her voice, the fact that she called him your father instead of just Dad, all of it screamed trouble. I followed her down to the living room where Dad sat on the couch with a legal pad covered in his precise handwriting and a stack of printed emails beside him. Sit down, sweetheart, Dad said, patting the cushion next to him. We need to discuss some complications that have come up. What kind of complications? But even as I asked, I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Mom settled into her armchair, the one she used for serious conversations, and folded her hands in her lap. This afternoon, I received a call from Patricia Martinez. You remember, she's on the school board and her daughter was in your class in middle school. She wanted to give me a heads up about some concerns that had been raised. My throat tightened. Concerns about what? About the incident with Tyler Kowalski, and whether the school's response was appropriate. Dad consulted his notes. Apparently, Tyler's parents are claiming their son was provoked into making inappropriate comments because you and Emma were being, quote, unnecessarily public with inappropriate displays of affection on school property. We held hands in the hallway, I said flatly. That's not inappropriate. We know that, Mom said quickly. But the Kowalskis have filed a formal complaint with the district, and they're demanding that Tyler's suspension be reversed. They're also. She paused, glancing at Dad like she was asking permission to continue. They're also what? Dad's jaw tightened. They're threatening to bring the matter to the next school board meeting. They want to propose new policies about what they call age-inappropriate relationship displays on campus. The words hit me like ice water. They want to ban gay couples from showing any affection at school. They want to ban what they consider excessive displays of affection from any couples, Mom corrected carefully. But Maya, we all know that's not how these policies get enforced in practice. I stared at the legal pad in Dad's hands, trying to process what they were telling me. So Tyler calls Emma and me dykes, makes graphic comments about our sex life, gets suspended for 3 days, and now his parents want to change school policy to make sure gay couples can't hold hands? That's exactly what they want, Dad said grimly. And unfortunately, they have support from at least 2 other board members, Jim Hendricks and Sarah Walsh. Those names sent a chill through me. Jim Hendricks owned the Christian bookstore downtown and had run for school board on a platform of protecting traditional family values in education. Sarah Walsh was the woman who led the charge to remove 3 books from the library last year because they had LGBTQ+ characters. How much support do they have? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Mom and Dad exchanged another look. It's hard to say, Mom admitted. Patricia thinks it's just the 3 of them, but she also said there's been a lot of chatter in some community Facebook groups since word got around about your situation. My situation. The phrase tasted bitter. Is that what we're calling it now? Maya, we're not the ones calling it anything, Dad said firmly. But honey, we need you to understand what we might be facing here. If this goes to a public school board meeting, if the Kowalskis make this their crusade. He trailed off, running his hand through his hair. If they make this their crusade, then what? Emma and I become the poster children for why gay kids shouldn't be allowed to exist openly at school? No, Mom's voice was sharp with conviction. If they make this their crusade, then we fight it. Your father and I have already been making phone calls of our own. I blinked at her. What kind of phone calls? Dad smiled for the first time since I'd come downstairs. The kind where we remind people that Riverside High has had plenty of straight couples making out by lockers for decades without anyone proposing policy changes. The kind where we point out that targeting one specific group of students for discrimination is both morally wrong and legally questionable. We've talked to other parents, Maya, Mom added. The Garcias, whose son David graduated 2 years ago. The Chens, yes, Jessica's family. Even the Webbs, because Marcus mentioned to his mother that our family has been very supportive during a difficult time. Wait. Something clicked. Marcus Webb? From my chemistry class? His mom knows about Jake and coffee shop Marcus? Mom's smile was almost smug. Apparently Marcus went home after his date with Jake last Saturday and couldn't stop talking about how wonderful your brother is. When Mrs. Webb heard about the school board situation, she called to ask how our family could possibly be under attack when we'd raised such thoughtful, kind children. The surreal nature of the conversation was making my head spin. My parents were building a support network to fight homophobic school policies. Jake's new boyfriend's family was apparently Team Morrison, and I was sitting in our living room discussing legal strategies instead of hiding in my room pretending none of this was happening. So what happens next? I asked. Next, we wait to see if the Kowalskis actually follow through on their threat to bring this to the board meeting, Dad said. And if they do, we make sure we're ready with our own presentation about why discrimination has no place in our schools. Mom leaned forward. Maya, I need you to know something. Your father and I are prepared to make this as public as it needs to be. We will stand up at that meeting and talk about our daughter and her relationship and why love should never be something to hide or apologize for. The weight of what she was offering, what they were both offering, settled over me like a warm blanket. 2 months ago, I'd been terrified to tell them I was dating Emma. Now they were ready to defend our relationship in front of the entire school district. What does Jake think about all this? I asked. Dad chuckled. Jake thinks the Kowalskis can, and I quote, take their homophobic garbage and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. He also volunteered to speak at the board meeting about what it means to have family support when you're figuring out your identity. He wants to come out publicly to defend me? He wants to come out publicly because it's time, Mom corrected gently. But yes, also to defend you. Apparently Marcus has been very encouraging about the idea of being open about their relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. My mom heard rumors about a school board thing. Are you okay? Do we need to lawyer up? Face with steam from nose. I showed my parents the message, and Dad laughed out loud. I like that girl more every day. Tell her we might need Patricia's famous righteous anger if this escalates. As I typed back a response to Emma, I realized something had shifted in the past week. The fear that had dominated my life for months was still there, but it was smaller now, manageable. Because I wasn't facing it alone anymore. Mom, Dad? I looked up from my phone. Whatever happens with the school board, whatever the Kowalskis tried to do, thank you for having my back. Always, sweetheart, Mom said simply. That's what family does. 3 weeks later, I stood at the podium in the Riverside High School auditorium, looking out at a packed room of parents, students, and school board members, and felt surprisingly calm. The auditorium that had hosted countless graduation ceremonies and talent shows was now ground zero for what the local newspaper had dubbed the Morrison Family Stand for Equality. My name is Maya Morrison, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone. 3 months ago, I was terrified to tell my own parents I was dating my best friend Emma Rodriguez. Tonight, I'm standing here to explain why that fear, and the policies the Kowalskis are proposing, have no place in our schools. In the third row, Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue while Dad sat straighter in his chair, pride radiating from every line of his body. Emma squeezed Jake's hand. They'd bonded over being Team Maya while Jake waited for his turn to speak. Marcus sat beside him, wearing a nervous smile and a rainbow pin on his jacket lapel. The harassment I faced after my relationship became public wasn't caused by me holding my girlfriend's hand in the hallway, I continued, finding my rhythm. It was caused by people who believe that some kinds of love are worth less than others. Tyler Kowalski didn't call me slurs because I was being inappropriately public. He did it because he thought gay students were acceptable targets. I paused, scanning the crowd until I found Mrs. Peterson in the back row, giving me an encouraging nod. But here's what the Kowalskis and their supporters don't understand. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the same respect that straight couples have always received at Riverside High. The same freedom to hold hands with someone I care about. The same right to exist openly without fear. The room was completely silent except for someone's phone buzzing and a baby fussing softly in the back. I could see Sarah Walsh and Jim Hendricks whispering to each other, their expressions sour, but I could also see families I recognized, the Garcias, the Chens, the Webbs, and a dozen others, watching with supportive attention. 6 months ago, my brother Jake outed me at our family dinner table. I heard Jake's sharp intake of breath from the audience. I was furious. I felt betrayed and violated and terrified of losing everyone I loved. But you know what happened? My parents hugged me and told me nothing could ever change how much they love me. My mom cried, happy tears, because I finally felt safe enough to be honest about who I am. Mom was openly crying now, and Dad had his arm around her shoulders. That's the kind of family support every LGBTQ+ student deserves. Not policies that force us back into hiding, but acceptance that lets us thrive openly. I gripped the podium, delivering my closing argument. The Kowalskis want you to believe that protecting students like me somehow threatens other families. But love doesn't work like that. There's not a limited supply. My happiness with Emma doesn't diminish anyone else's relationships, it adds to the total amount of love and joy in our school community. As I walked back to my seat, the auditorium erupted in applause that went on for nearly a minute. Jake was already standing, ready for his turn, but he caught my hand as I passed. Thank you, he whispered. For everything. For forgiving me, for helping me find the courage to be here tonight. Thank you, I whispered back, for outing me at that dinner table. His eyes widened in surprise, and I smiled. I'm serious, Jake. I hated how you did it, but I'm grateful it happened. Because now I get to stand up here and tell 300 people that I'm proud to be gay, proud of my family, and proud to be a Morrison. The school board voted 5-2 against the proposed policy changes that night, and Tyler Kowalski's suspension was upheld. But more importantly, I walked out of that auditorium holding Emma's hand, with my parents flanking us and Jake and Marcus behind us, feeling like the luckiest 17-year-old in the world. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us turn out to be exactly what we needed.